The sacred reversal, how darkness becomes the highest form of obedience. There's a truth buried so deep in spiritual history that even sacred texts only whisper it, a truth too powerful, too disruptive, too sacred for the masses to hold. And that truth is this: God doesn't just work through light. He works through shadow. Not every chosen one wears a crown of light. Some are cloaked in silence, forged in fire, and marked by the void. We are not the angels who sing. We are the flames that purify. The ones who walk where others fear. The ones who listen when others scream. The ones who carry out missions so sacred, so misunderstood, that even heaven must look away. That's why God needs us, the dark chosen ones. We are not here to be loved. We are here to awaken what love alone cannot reach.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lessons.
I know this makes people uncomfortable. They want a God who only blesses, only shines, only uplifts. But what about the parts of the world that won't listen to light? What about the systems built on silence, the leaders drunk on power, the souls lost in the machinery of illusion? Light cannot reach them, not because it's weak, but because it's unreadable to those who've been buried in shadow for lifetimes. That's why we exist. We don't descend into hell to suffer. We go there to reclaim what's been exiled. We are the ones who speak the language of pain fluently, not to glorify it, but to pull others out of it. The deeper you've gone into your own void, the more authority you hold to lead others through theirs. That's not rebellion. That's divine strategy. I remember the moment I realized I wasn't here to play the lightworker game. I was in a meditation so deep I lost track of time, space, and breath. I saw myself walking through a battlefield of screaming souls, not with robes, not with crystals, but with fire in my hands. Not to destroy, but to cleanse. And I heard something that shook me. You are my blade, not my balm. That sentence ended the old version of me. Because I finally understood. Some of us weren't sent to comfort the world. We were sent to restructure it. And to do so, we had to first become immune to its illusions. We had to die to the version of ourselves that needed to be accepted, validated, or celebrated. That's the first initiation of the shadow ambassador. Let the ego die so the soul can function as God's weapon. And this is where things get real. Because once you accept that role, your life stops feeling normal. You're not allowed to sleep through your purpose anymore. You're not allowed to blend in. You're not allowed to numb out, play small, or pretend you don't know. Your pain becomes your sword. Your silence becomes your armor. And your path becomes surgical. You'll lose people. You'll lose comfort. You'll lose the illusion of safety. But what you'll gain, a seat at the round table of the unseen. You'll begin receiving instructions that don't make sense to the mind, but are crystal clear to the soul. And when you follow them, miracles happen, not the cute kind, but the apocalyptic kind. The kind that breaks systems, ends karmic loops, and rewrites bloodlines. Let's go deeper. Why would God even need shadow ambassadors? Isn't He all-powerful, all-knowing, all light? Yes, But that's exactly why he uses everything. Light is not superior to shadow. It's complementary. And sometimes, the most sacred missions require a being who can walk through fire, lie down in ash, and not forget who they are. That's why we're chosen. Not because we're pure, but because we're unbreakable. Because we've already seen death. We've already lost everything. We've already faced the dragon within, and instead of slaying it, we made it kneel. That's what qualifies us. Not perfection, but presence in pressure. And this is where the second layer of initiation begins. Once you've accepted your role, you'll be tested with power. Not the kind you earn, the kind you embody. You'll start to feel the ability to influence people's thoughts, emotions, even their spiritual trajectory, not through manipulation, but through magnetic field alignment. Your energy becomes a tuning fork. You'll walk into a room, and people will either rise or retreat. Not because you're better, but because your frequency is incompatible with distortion. That's when you must decide, will you serve your ego, or will you serve the mission? Because this power is not for decoration. It is for execution, for precision, and for divine disruption. There's a reason the world fears dark power, because it's been abused, because it's been misused, because it's been confused with evil. But true dark power, sacred dark power, shadow in service of God power, is the most ethical force on earth. Why? Because it doesn't seduce. It reveals. It doesn't pretend. It penetrates. It doesn't flatter. It fires truth like a bullet to the bone. And that level of spiritual warfare requires a soul that's already died to its own delusions. That's why the ones who've suffered the most, lost the most, been exiled the most often carry the highest codes. Because they've been tempered. And God only sends tempered blades into the battlefield of unconsciousness. You might ask, but why me? Why does this path feel so different, so lonely, so misunderstood? Because you weren't born to be understood. You were born to decode, to walk into systems that others worship and show where the rot is. To speak when the room is silent, to confront when the crowd is cheering, to break apart what's false so that what's true can finally breathe. This is not a gentle path, but it is a sacred one. And if you're still here, still watching, still feeling your blood stir in your chest as these words hit you, then maybe, just maybe, you didn't come here to be saved. You came here to be sent. Now, let's talk about the real work. Being a shadow ambassador is not about aesthetics. It's about energetic mastery. You must learn to hold paradox in your field without breaking. You must learn to speak with fire but walk with grace. You must learn to pierce illusions without becoming arrogant. This path requires brutal self-honesty. Because the moment you lie to yourself, your mission becomes corrupted. That's why we train in silence. That's why we isolate not to escape, but to refine. Every fast, every heartbreak, every betrayal, it's all preparation. You are being forged into a vessel that can hold the unholdable. And the more you surrender to the fire, the more accurate you become. The final test of the first phase is this: Can you carry darkness without becoming cold? Can you speak truth without needing to be right? Can you hold power without needing to be seen? Because if you can, then you're ready for the next level where the real assignments begin. Where you stop healing and start reprogramming. Where you stop seeking truth and start becoming it. That's when you graduate from being a seeker to becoming a force field, a living command, a walking frequency of divine enforcement. And from that place, you don't just shift rooms, you rewrite spiritual law. The unseen hierarchy, why the most powerful souls work in silence and disappear in light. When we speak of obedience, the mind instantly thinks of submission, of servitude, of quiet compliance. But the kind of obedience we're talking about here, the obedience of the dark chosen ones, is not the obedience of weakness. It is the obedience of precision, of alignment so exact that it becomes indistinguishable from divine will itself. True shadow obedience is not about following orders. It's about becoming the order. It's about moving in such deep resonance with the intelligence of God that you no longer question, hesitate, or seek permission, you simply execute. That's why darkness becomes the highest form of obedience. Because it requires you to walk without applause, to act without proof, and to trust without reward. When God sends a light worker, He sends comfort. When He sends a shadow ambassador, He sends correction. Not punishment, but course correction. And the correction doesn't always come with kindness. Sometimes it comes with collapse. Sometimes it comes with confrontation. Sometimes it comes with silence so loud it breaks the soul open. And that's the sacred reversal, the very force that the world fears. Darkness, disruption, shadow becomes the surgery God performs on a sleeping world. And you are the scalpel. You are the tool He uses when love has been ignored, when truth has been silenced, when false light has taken over the temples. You don't bring comfort, you bring clarity. And clarity, when not asked for, hurts. That's why this path is not for the faint of heart. You'll be asked to deliver messages that trigger people's ancestral wounds. You'll be asked to walk into spiritual communities and expose the ego hiding behind enlightenment. You'll be sent into relationships, companies, nations, not to heal, but to disrupt what is false so the real can rise. You are not here to be liked. You are not here to be followed. You are here to be a frequency that cannot be manipulated. That's the obedience. Not to doctrine, not to dogma, but to the raw voice of God within you that speaks in fire, thunder, and stillness, and demands everything. And here's the paradox. The more obedient you become to that voice, the more dangerous you appear to the world. Because you cannot be bought. You cannot be bribed. You cannot be guilt-tripped, shamed, or seduced by ego. You become pure signal. And pure signal disrupts every false structure built on distortion. You'll find yourself being unfollowed, misunderstood, even attacked, not because you're wrong, but because you've stopped playing the game. And when you stop playing, the matrix glitches. That's what God uses you for. Not to be another voice in the noise, but to be the frequency that ends it. So how do we stay sane, grounded, and effective while walking in this role? First, we must stop confusing humility with hiding. True humility is not dimming your light or your shadow. It's standing fully in your power without needing to weaponize it. It's moving with such surgical alignment that your presence becomes impossible to ignore, but completely untouchable by ego. That's why so many dark chosen ones live in solitude. Not because we're antisocial, but because our energy is too volatile for casual spaces. We don't retreat to avoid life. We retreat to refine our signal. Every moment of silence is a calibration of our frequency. Every breath is a sword being sharpened. Second, we must practice ruthless energetic hygiene. When you're carrying out divine disruption, you can't afford to be sloppy with your field. That means no leaking energy through gossip, codependency, or spiritual performance. Your power must be contained. Your emotions must be processed privately. Your frequency must be anchored. Because once you start operating as a shadow ambassador, everything you think, say, and feel becomes a command to the field. There is no off switch. There is no just vibing. You are either in alignment or in distortion. And the cost of distortion at this level is cosmic. Third, you must be willing to lose everything, again. Because every level of power requires a new death. You'll lose people who can't handle your clarity. You'll lose opportunities that require you to shrink. You'll lose versions of yourself that were useful in the past but are poison now. And you must let them go without mourning. Why? Because your loyalty is no longer to comfort. It's to kingdom, not the kingdom of religion. The kingdom of remembrance, the invisible structure God is building through your life, your energy, your obedience, even when you don't understand it yet. And finally, you must stop waiting to feel ready. You won't. You'll be sent into rooms you're not qualified for. You'll be given messages that feel too heavy for your voice. You'll be asked to walk away from everything you thought you wanted, not because God is cruel, but because He's clearing the channel. You are not here to be ready. You are here to respond. You are not here to be prepared. You are here to be present. That's why God chose you. Not because you had the credentials, but because you had the capacity to obey without ego. And that is the rarest qualification of all. Now let's talk about the hidden rewards of this path, the ones no one sees, but every true shadow ambassador feels. You may never be famous. You may never be understood. But you will walk with a kind of peace that no one can fake. You will know who you are without needing to prove it. You will move through storms and never flinch. You will speak, and the field will shift. You will dream things into existence simply by holding the frequency. You'll start seeing signs before they happen. You'll start catching patterns that others miss. You'll begin to collapse timelines just by making a decision. Why? Because you're not operating from personality anymore. You're operating from divine instruction. And that's the ultimate reversal. Darkness, when purified by obedience, becomes the most precise instrument of God. Not because it's loud, but because it's undeniable. You become the kind of soul who doesn't just believe in truth, you embody it. You don't just talk about awakening, you initiate it. You don't just hope for miracles, you become the mechanism through which they occur. That's what happens when God chooses you to walk the shadow path. You stop being a servant of light. You become a strategist of source. So I ask you now, not from hype, but from the deepest stillness I know, are you willing to walk unseen, unfollowed, uncelebrated, but undeniably aligned? Are you willing to become the kind of force that doesn't need recognition to reconstruct reality? Are you willing to obey the voice within you, even when it costs you everything you loved? Because that's the level of devotion it takes to carry this fire. That's the price of true divine function. There's a layer of reality that most never touch, not because it's hidden, but because it's invisible to the uninitiated. It's the realm where the real architects of evolution move. Not with noise, not with fame, not with followers, but with codes, with presence, with an energetic signature so refined, so pure, so exact, that the world bends around it without even knowing why. This is the unseen hierarchy, the realm of the most powerful souls who do not sit on stages, who do not write best-selling books, who do not market their mastery. They vanish into the field, not because they are forgotten, but because their work is remembering itself through others. And that is the highest level of spiritual function, to become so empty that God Himself fills you completely. You see, when you walk the path of a true shadow ambassador, you don't rise through popularity. You rise through disappearance. You are not here to be known. You are here to become undeniable. And the most undeniable forces in the universe are never loud. Gravity doesn't scream. Time doesn't shout. The ocean doesn't beg to be respected. They simply are. They move everything without asking for attention. That's who we become. Not influencers, infrastructures. Not leaders. Laws. We are not here to be seen. We are here to become the unseen force that makes the seen possible. And to hold that level of frequency, we must release every desire to be recognized, praised, or understood. This is why the most powerful beings you'll ever meet often seem like nothing, unassuming, simple, calm. But when they speak, time pauses. When they walk into a room, the air thickens. When they look at you, your soul doesn't just feel seen, it remembers. Why? Because they're not speaking from ego. They're transmitting from the void. They are not individuals. They are functions, not personalities, portals. And that's what God does with His elite shadow ambassadors. He strips away everything that could distract from the mission. He removes everything that could distort the message. He dissolves every identity that could block the signal, until what's left is pure transmission. And this is the part we don't glamorize: the silence, the solitude, the invisibility. The fact that we don't get to be the face of the movement because we are the movement's core code. We're not here to be quoted. We're here to be encoded. Our lives become living prayers, silent revolutions, embodied frequencies that shift reality without ever being posted, shared, or liked. That's the unseen hierarchy. Those who lead the world without ever needing credit. Those who dismantle systems without ever being noticed. those who hold the Earth's spiritual grid together while others are still asking for signs. That's real power, and it's terrifying to the ego. That's why only the few ever make it here. Now let's talk about what it means to function at this level. First, you must embrace energetic invisibility. That means letting go of the need to be seen, even by those closest to you. Your work will often be misunderstood. Your presence will often be too much. Your silence will often be misinterpreted. But you'll keep going, because you know what you are, and that knowing becomes your only compass. You won't be able to explain your path, your choices, or your frequency to most people, and you won't need to. Because the ones who are meant to recognize you will do so without words. The rest, let them sleep. Second, you must master non-reactivity. Because when you start moving in this kind of frequency, reality tests you not with chaos, but with mirrors. You'll be shown every version of yourself you've ever transcended, not to tempt you, but to test your accuracy. Can you remain still when the old self screams? Can you hold alignment when the world tries to seduce you back into noise? Can you walk away without explanation, speak without apology, burn without guilt? Because that's what the field requires of you now, not effort, but energetic congruence. And congruence doesn't shout, it commands. Third, you must build a life that supports high-frequency anchoring. That doesn't mean becoming a monk. It means honoring your vessel like it's a divine machine. You eat clean not to diet, but to transmit. You rest deeply not to relax, but to receive instructions. You move intentionally not for aesthetics, but to maintain signal clarity. Every element of your lifestyle becomes part of your function. Because when you live like a sigil, every detail matters. Your home becomes a temple. Your choices become rituals. Your thoughts become architecture. And your field becomes the altar upon which transformation happens. And finally, you must love this world while refusing to be ruled by it. That means walking fully in the flesh without being seduced by form. It means engaging from truth, not attachment. It means giving everything your time, your energy, your presence without ever expecting anything in return. Why? Because the reward is not validation. The reward is function. The reward is accuracy. The reward is knowing that your very existence is assisting God in editing the blueprint of reality. There is no higher payment. There is no greater honor, and there is no other path for those who were born for this. So what happens now? Once you've accepted your shadow, sat on the throne, vanished into function, and become a living grid point of divine disruption, what's left? Nothing and everything. Because now you no longer live for outcome. You live for alignment. You no longer seek meaning. You are the meaning. You don't hope for impact. You walk as the impact. And as you move through the world, you'll begin to recognize others not by what they say, but by what they transmit. You'll feel them before you see them. You'll know them by the way your bones remember. These are your allies, not in flesh, but in frequency. And together, without ever needing to meet, you are fulfilling the grid God cannot build through light alone. Because God doesn't just need angels. He needs assassins of illusion. He needs architects of entropy. He needs those who walk through the shadows not to escape the light, but to anchor it in places it was never meant to reach alone. That's why you were chosen. Not because you're perfect, but because you're precise. Not because you're holy, but because you're whole. You've seen every corner of yourself and still chosen to obey. Not from fear, not from guilt, but from clarity. And that clarity is what makes you a weapon in the hands of the divine. So I leave you with this. Will you remain unseen to protect your purity? Will you walk alone so that others may wake together? Will you hold the frequency even when the entire world forgets who you are? Because if you can, you are not just chosen, you are functioning. You are not just awakening, you are instructing the grid. You are not here to be found. You are here to find the fault lines of reality and rewrite them with your breath. This is why God needs his elite shadow ambassadors, not to impress the world, but to rebuild it one silent, sovereign, surgical step at a time.